Russia has relied extensively on its KAB-guided glide bombs since its war with Ukraine began. Kremlin officials call these bombs unstoppable, and for a long time, that's exactly what they were. They were used to devastating effect, with hundreds or even thousands being dropped month after month, dealing massive damage to Ukrainian towns, cities, and frontline fortifications. But the days of KABs wiping out infrastructure and causing mass casualties may be at an end, because Ukraine has finally figured out a way to stop them, turning these expensive explosives into little more than useless scrap, and bringing Russia's threat level way down in the process. To understand why this matters, it's important to first understand what a big threat these bombs truly are. The KAB, or Adjustable Aircraft Bomb, is basically Russia's equivalent of the US Joint Direct Attack Munition, or JDAM. JDAM guidance kits effectively turn unguided or dumb bombs into smart, precision munitions, making them dramatically more accurate and effective on the battlefield. The KAB does more or less the same thing. It upgrades dumb bombs, fitting them with steering fins and satellite-powered guidance systems, allowing them to hit pre-programmed locations. Their accuracy is exceptional. In good conditions, with the right weather and clear readings, they can strike a target within a margin of error of just 20 meters, or 65 feet. That's more than good enough to hit a specific building or structure, making it easy for Russia to take out the exact targets they want with remarkable reliability. The folding wings fitted to KABs give them extended range too. Many can travel around 40 miles or 65 kilometers to reach their targets, but others can go significantly further, with the most advanced models equipped with the latest and greatest UMPK guidance modules, boasting a claimed range of around 120 miles or 195 kilometers. While that's nowhere close to the 1,000-plus mile range of many missiles and unmanned aerial vehicles, like Shahed drones, it's still an impressive amount of range for a bomb of this size. It allows Russia to fire KABs from inside its own airspace, for example, but target locations beyond the border, in Ukraine's occupied territories or other regions. Once launched, the bomb's GPS navigation system takes off, with the weapon using its fins to steer itself to its preset destination. And once they get there, they're packing more than enough explosive firepower to deal serious damage and destruction. As far as warheads go, KABs vary widely in size and destructive power. Smaller variants carry warheads of around 500 pounds, roughly 225 kilograms. Others double that, reaching 1,000 pounds or about 450 kilograms. But that's just the beginning. Russia also deploys much heavier versions. The KAB 1500, for example, carries a warhead weighing roughly 1,500 kilograms over 3,000 pounds. These are true block-busting weapons. At impact, they can create craters up to 50 feet wide, designed to destroy hardened targets, reinforce structures, and critical infrastructure. These heavy-duty warheads are used when the Kremlin's war machine wants to deal the maximum amount of damage in the minimum amount of time, destroying the likes of concrete bunkers and fortified Ukrainian defensive positions, or to wipe out civilian infrastructure off the map entirely. And it's not just that KABs have incredible range, enormous power, and exceptional precision. They're also extremely difficult to intercept or stop in any way too, since they fly at such high speeds, typically reaching several hundred miles per hour as they hone in on their chosen targets. On top of all of this, they're not all that expensive to make. A high-end KAB fitted with a UMPK module, for example, will cost Russia around $25,000 per unit. These factors have made KABs an integral and almost invaluable part of Russia's arsenal, and even Ukraine was forced to admit as much. The country's newspaper, Strana, wrote on October 24, 2025, "The Russians have struck gold. Their KABs carry 2 or 3 times more explosive than Shahed drones, fly at higher speeds, maneuver less predictably thanks to the UMPK, and are smaller than a missile, making them harder to shoot down." Military Portal, The War Zone, agreed, writing around the same time, "The KAB with a long-range UMPK module is a huge headache for air defenses. They're extremely difficult to shoot down because they're small, relatively fast, flying at a speed of between 250 and 310 miles per hour, and do not leave a thermal signature." And for many months, Russia took full advantage of these weapons. Throughout 2024, it dropped anywhere from 3,200 to 3,500 of them each month. In 2025, that figure exploded, with some months seeing several thousand KABs fall. In fact, A single week in October 2025 saw Russian aircraft fire a staggering 1,370 KAB bombs. For the Ukrainian Defense Forces, this was an enormous setback. They thought they'd already found a way to counter the KAB threat. In 2024, Kyiv's forces realized that, despite their many advantages, these guided bombs had one significant drawback, an Achilles heel that could prove to be their undoing. They could be jammed. It's a similar story with a lot of guided munitions, since they typically rely on satellite navigation systems to find and strike their targets. It's possible for opposition forces to jam those satellite signals, effectively turning these smart bombs back into dumb ones, leaving them flying blind and far less likely to reach their destinations. They can still deal serious amounts of damage even when jammed, but will often veer off course and miss their intended targets. In other words, jamming these bombs' communications is one of the best ways to dramatically reduce their impact on the battlefield and decrease the amount of damage and casualties they cause. So, that's exactly what Ukraine did. Its engineers and defense industry professionals studied the KABs' design, figured out how it worked, and used their own electronic warfare equipment to disable their communications. Initially, this worked well. The KABs that Russia was using back then had a relatively rudimentary Cometa-4 Controlled Reception Pattern Antenna (CRPA) system. Also known as an adaptive antenna, null steering antenna, or a beamforming antenna, the CRPA system uses multiple antenna elements. The Cometa-4 system, for example, had 4 of these elements, and they could be used in various ways. The signals from multiple antennas could be added together, for example, to amplify their signal. Alternatively, and more importantly, individual antennas could be used to subtract or nullify signals, similar to how noise-cancelling headphones are able to selectively block out certain ambient sounds while in use. This method allowed a KAB equipped with a Cometa-4 to effectively bypass a certain number of jammers. To be more precise, with its 4 antenna elements in total, the Cometa-4 was effectively able to cancel out up to 3 jammers at a time. That wasn't too much of a problem for Ukraine, however. It merely had to use a minimum of 4 jammers at a time to effectively render these bombs worthless, diverting them away from their targets like frontline fortifications and causing them to explode in empty fields or other areas where they had little chance of dealing any real damage. For a while this worked. Reports show that many of Russia's bombs were veering wildly off target. Millions of dollars of explosives were being wasted, with bombs that were supposed to strike troop concentrations or bunkers ending up in farmers' fields or other empty, worthless patches of land. But then Russia upgraded its technology. As a Ukrainian defense industry spokesperson explained, the effectiveness of KABs depends directly on their guidance system. Previously, they used the Cometa-4 CRPA, and later after, Ukraine expanded its electronic warfare EW system Cometa-8. With twice as many elements compared to the Cometa-4, the Cometa-8 allowed KABs to cancel out up to 7 jammers at a time, with 1 antenna left over to preserve its communications and allow it to continue honing in on its exact target. Again, Ukraine worked hard to counteract these new systems, investing in more EW equipment to jam the additional antennas. But Russia kept upping the ante. It was a feverish, frantic back-and-forth situation, with each side constantly going further and further to cancel out the other side's upgrades. When Ukraine found a way to deal with the Cometa-8, for example, Russia pushed its satellite guidance systems further, increasing the number of elements to 12, then to 16. Not only that, but they also changed the ways in which these antennas worked. As the spokesperson notes, the Russians developed a fundamentally new series of CRPAs. We compare their creation to the development of the Enigma in World War II. These CRPAs are capable of resisting a level of jamming that significantly exceeds the number of their antenna elements. It reached a point where Russia's bombs were fitted with an 8-element system that needed a whopping 19 jammers to counter. Some were dramatically more resistant, impossible to counter with even 100 jammers concentrated on them. And even on the rare occasions when Ukraine's jamming technology worked, it wasn't as effective as it once had been, only kicking in at short ranges when the bombs were only a few hundred meters away from their targets. For a time, it seemed that Russia had won this fight, and it used KABs to devastating effect, wiping out not just frontline defenses, but civilian structures like schools and residential buildings too. But it wasn't going to last, because Ukraine was working on something that would shift the balance of power back in its favor, at last. Now, before we get into that, there's more where this came from. So if you're getting value from the military show, don't forget to subscribe. After years of suffering the terrible effects of Russia's smart precision bombs, Ukraine finally worked out the ultimate way to stop them. A new jammer, unlike anything seen before. One that Russia has no answer for. One that makes even their best CRPA systems absolutely useless. Enter the Lima Quant. Developed by Ukrainian defense contractor in conjunction with the country's elite Night Watch EW unit, the Lima Quant system is said to be able to nullify KABs entirely. A spokesperson for the company revealed to reporters that as soon as Ukraine started to use this system, the effectiveness of KABs dropped to zero. On a roughly 700-kilometer stretch of the front, the enemy dropped 869 KABs in one of the previous months. The consequences of these strikes were minor injuries to 8 servicemen. That last point is worth reiterating. Russia dropped almost 1,000 bombs along 700 kilometers, 435 miles of land, and only 8 Ukrainian soldiers were injured as a result. For Kyiv's forces, that's an astonishing success story, whichever way you look at it. And for Russia, it's an abject, humiliating failure, a colossal waste of money, time and resources, producing and dropping that many bombs for absolutely no tangible result or advantage. So, how does this system actually work? Well, the company and the Ukrainian military have so far been tight-lipped when it comes to revealing any technical specifications or exact details about the Lima Quant system. But we do have some idea regarding its effectiveness, with a spokesperson explaining, "The KABs either did not hit, or they could not even be released because the guidance system produced a navigation error. Russian pilots didn't understand what was happening because navigation on these CRPAs was lost 100 kilometers before the line of combat." The spokesperson also noted that a similar situation occurred when the company created its initial Lima EW system, which has proven enormously effective at countering Russia's other aerial threats, like Shahed-style drones and cruise missiles. For the price of around $1.2 million, each Lima EW unit can protect entire pieces of infrastructure or key strategic locations from aerial attacks. And in 2025, reports emerge of these systems even proving strong enough to handle Russia's fastest and deadliest missiles, Kinzhals. Able to reach peak speeds of Mach 10, which is over 7,670 miles per hour, these missiles have historically been almost impossible to intercept. Launched by modified Mikoyan MiG-31 interceptors and tipping the scales at an eye-watering 4.7 tons, they can travel as high as 15.5 miles or 25 kilometers above the ground, delivering a 1,000-pound or 450-kilogram payload over a distance of around 300 miles or 480 kilometers. Even the best Western air defenses delivered to Ukraine, like the US Patriot missile system, have struggled to deal with the Kinzhal, which is why Russia so often launches at least a couple of them when carrying out their massive aerial assaults of Ukrainian cities, power plants, substations, and other locations. Fortunately, the Lima EW entered the arena and proved more than capable of bringing down literally dozens of these missiles with ease. They also did it with style, humorously replacing the missile's satellite navigation signals with the famous Ukrainian anthem entitled "Our Father is Bandera," in reference to the Ukrainian World War II insurgent of the same name. So, as they draw closer to Ukrainian targets, Kinzhal signals are replaced with their enemy's melody, which sends them veering wildly off course, often striking several hundred yards away from their intended destinations. It may be that the Lima Quant system, the new and increasingly powerful version of this EW system, works in a similar way against the KAB glide bombs, but Lima's overall rollout hasn't exactly been the smoothest operation. Because there's one big downside to this system: it doesn't separate between friends and foes. It jams everything around it, and that can include Ukrainian drones as well as Russia's aerial threats. Thanks to this, some Ukrainian commanders have argued against the usage of the Lima system, as the company's spokesperson explains. Brigade commanders conducting combat operations began imposing bans on EW operation, arguing that their Mavic drones and bombers couldn't carry out missions. These bans are our main problem right now. The company behind Lima notes that this problem could quite easily be solved by modifying Ukrainian drones to make them resistant to the Lima EW effects. This has led to a clash between the company and certain brigade commanders, with both sides blaming the other for their respective problems. Some commanders have even filed complaints of corruption against the company, which led to delays in developing Lima Quant. Competitors, unhappy with the extremely rapid pace of Lima deployment, began making unfounded complaints to law enforcement. The work of the team and the manufacturer was suspended for more than half a year, which led to significant losses. Despite all this, it appears that the situation has, at last, settled down, and Lima Quant is already in active use and having a miraculous effect on the battlefield. Its makers claim that this system is uniquely effective, with no other EU system able to cope so well at countering the new Russian Kometa antenna systems. Today, Lima Quant is the only system in the world capable of suppressing these CRPAs at a distance of 50 kilometers, KABs at distances of more than 100 kilometers, and cruise and ballistic missiles at even greater distances. Indeed, the system isn't just good for stopping KAB bombs, it's also proven increasingly effective against missiles, including the aforementioned Kinzhal. According to Ukrainian reporting, Patriot-equipped air defenses were able to intercept the first confirmed Kinzhal in May 2023. And Ukrainian officials later said that over time, more than 20 Kinzhal missiles launched at Kyiv have been successfully shot down. The 41 or 42 figure often cited in air defense reporting actually referred to a December 2023 engagement involving Shahed drones, not Kinzhals. That still means tens of millions of dollars worth of Russian missiles and drones have been wasted, on top of the countless KABs and other aerial threats that failed to find their targets. It almost sounds too good to be true. And it's important to exercise caution and moderation when talking about new weapons or innovative defenses like Lima Quant. They may seem all-powerful at first, but it may be just a matter of time until Russia figures out some new way to get around them. That caution is even more important because more recent reporting suggests Russia has been adapting some of its ballistic missile tactics, which may be reducing interception rates in certain cases. For now, however, the system appears to be working very well, and as long as the team behind Lima remains proactive in countering future Russian threats and keeping its technology up to date, this could still become an enormous boon for Ukrainian forces. It quite literally nullifies one of Russia's most important weapons, as a Night Watch officer explains. When implemented on a sufficiently large scale and coordinated across operational sectors, these systems can dramatically limit the ability of guided bombs and UAVs to strike intended targets. In other words, if Ukraine can roll out enough of these Lima Quant systems, it won't matter how many drones, missiles, or glide bombs Russia sends its way. Almost all will be eliminated, with their signals jammed and communications blocked far before the point of impact. And that's already happening. In late 2025, Ukrainian officials confirmed that they had found new ways to counter Russia's glide bombs with an advanced EW system, which has since been revealed to be the Lima Quant. The same officials added that they were in the process of extending these systems, broadening their coverage and deploying them in additional areas to provide more and more of Ukrainian territory and infrastructure with an invisible yet impenetrable electronic shield. A barrier of electronic energy that even the fastest and most advanced Russian bombs and missiles cannot bypass. We can't know how long that barrier will last. Russia may already be at work on the next evolution of its CRPA navigation systems. But at least for the time being, Ukraine has the breathing room it needs and no longer has to be quite as fearful of Russia's bombs raining down from above. And it's already using that breathing room to best effect, carrying out massive attacks on Russia's most valuable oil infrastructure locations, which you can learn more about in this video. Alternatively, for a look at yet another way in which Ukrainian innovation is destroying Russian steel, check out this video, which explores how Kyiv's defenders are using cheap drones to take out millions of dollars of Kremlin hardware. And for more insightful analysis, breaking news reports, and tactical breakdowns, subscribe to The Military Show today.